Captain Marcus Webb stood quietly in the corner of the Galactic Assembly Hall, watching as delegates from across the galaxy debated humanity's fate. The massive chamber buzzed with conversations in dozens of alien languages, but the message was clear in every tongue: humans were weak. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall blue-skinned being named Vortan, gestured dismissively at the holographic display showing Earth's defense fleet. "Look at these primitive vessels," he scoffed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Metal hulls, chemical propulsion, and energy shields that barely function. How did such a backward species even achieve space travel?" Laughter rippled through the assembly. The Korthak representative, a massive insectoid creature called Jex, clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Their largest warship is smaller than our cargo haulers. Perhaps we should offer them protection instead of conquest." Marcus remained silent, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had served in the Terran Space Navy for 30 years, rising through the ranks during humanity's most desperate period. While other species built massive fleets for show, humans had learned a different lesson. They had learned to hide. The debate continued for hours. Species after species stood to mock humanity's apparent weakness. The Valdorn Empire suggested using Earth as a mining colony. The Nexari Collective proposed turning humans into a servant race. Each suggestion was more humiliating than the last. Finally, High Chancellor Morven of the Assembly called for order. The ancient being's crystalline form glowed softly as he spoke. "The matter is settled. Humanity lacks the strength to defend itself. The Korthak swarm is hereby granted permission to claim the Sol system." A cheer erupted from the Korthak delegation. Jex rose from his seat, his forearms spread wide in triumph. "The harvest begins in 7 days. Earth's resources will feed our hives for generations." Marcus finally stepped forward, his boots clicking against the polished floor. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the lone human representative. He was unremarkable by galactic standards: average height, graying hair, wearing a simple uniform that looked outdated compared to the elaborate attire of other delegates. 7 days, Marcus repeated quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "That should be enough time," Vorthan laughed. "Enough time for what, human? To beg for mercy?" Marcus smiled, but there was something cold in his expression that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "No," he said simply. "Enough time for you to remember why silence can be more terrifying than any roar." Without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber as thousands of alien eyes followed his departure. None of them understood his words, but something in his tone had planted a seed of unease. The Korthak swarm would arrive at Earth in 7 days, expecting to find a defenseless world. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, building weapons that existed in the spaces between reality itself. Fleet Commander Vex of the Korthak swarm watched the blue marble of Earth grow larger on his command screen. Behind him, 300 bioships pulsed with organic energy, their living hulls rippling like muscle tissue. Each vessel was a masterpiece of biotechnology, grown rather than built, capable of adapting to any threat. "Pathetic," Vex muttered, studying the scan results. "Their orbital defenses are even weaker than reported. A few outdated stations, some patrol craft that look like they belong in a museum." His second-in-command, Threx, scuttled across the bridge on 6 legs. "The humans haven't even raised their shields, Commander. They appear to be surrendering, without a fight." Through the viewing ports, Earth looked peaceful and undefended. A few civilian ships moved between the outer planets, but there was no sign of military preparation. The moon bases showed normal activity levels. Even Mars' colony seemed to be going about its regular business. Vex's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary ones continued monitoring the tactical display. "Something feels wrong, Threx. No species gives up this easily." "Perhaps they truly are as weak as the Assembly believed," Threx replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. The Zephyrians were certain of their assessment. The swarm began its approach to Earth's outer defensive perimeter. Ancient protocols demanded that they offer terms of surrender first, though no one expected the humans to refuse. Vex opened a communication channel to the planet below. "People of Earth," his voice boomed across all frequencies. "I am Fleet Commander Vex of the Korthak Swarm. By order of the Galactic Assembly, your system now belongs to us. Surrender peacefully, and we will allow your species to serve our hives with honor." Silence answered him. No response came from Earth, Mars, or any of the human colonies. The communication networks remained active, but no one seemed willing to speak. "Curious," Vex mused. "Try the direct military frequencies, Threx." His second-in-command worked the bioorganic controls, sending the surrender demand on every known Terran military channel. Still nothing. It was as if the entire human species had simply chosen to ignore them. Then the first ship vanished. The loss registered on Vex's sensors as a simple absence. One moment the scout vessel Harvester was there. The next it wasn't. No explosion, no energy discharge, no distress signal. The ship simply ceased to exist. "Report," Vex snapped, his voice sharp with sudden concern. "Unknown, Commander." Threx's voice carried a tremor of fear. The Harvester was scanning the asteroid, belt between Mars and Jupiter, when contact was lost. No hostile signatures detected, no weapons fire. Before Vex could respond, 2 more ships disappeared from his tactical display. Both had been on the outer edge of the formation, probing what appeared to be empty space. The swarm's biosensors, evolved over millions of years to detect the faintest traces of life and energy, found nothing but void. "This is impossible," Vex growled. "Ships don't just vanish. Order all vessels to tighten formation and activate full defensive postures." The massive bioships began to cluster together, their living hulls shifting color as internal defenses came online. Weapon pods extended from their flanks like flowering buds, ready to unleash torrents of bioplasma at any threat. But the attacks continued. Every few minutes, another ship would simply disappear from the formation. No flash of light, no final transmission, nothing to indicate what was destroying them. It was as if invisible predators were picking off the swarm one by one. Fear began to spread through the Korthak fleet. These were warriors who had conquered a dozen systems, beings bred for battle who knew no fear of conventional weapons. But this wasn't conventional warfare. This was something else entirely. In the depths of space, humanity's ghost fleet moved through dimensions the Korthak couldn't perceive, striking without warning and vanishing without trace. Lieutenant Commander. Jake Morrison felt the familiar tingle of dimensional shift as the TSS Phantom phased back into normal space. Around him, the bridge crew worked in absolute silence, their movements precise and practiced. After 5 years of operating humanity's ghost fleet, they had learned that sound discipline meant survival. "Target acquired," whispered Navigation Officer Rita Park, her voice barely audible. "Korthak Biocruiser, designation Hotel 7, bearing 27 Mark IV. Morrison nodded to his weapons officer, a young man named David Cross who had volunteered for the Ghost program straight out of the academy. Cross's fingers danced over controls that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, preparing weapons that could strike across the boundaries of reality itself. The Phantom was invisible to conventional sensors, existing partially outside normal space-time. Its hull was constructed from metamaterials that bent light, gravity, and even time itself around the ship. To outside observers, there was simply nothing there, not even a void where something should be. "Temporal displacement cannon. Charged," Cross reported in the same whisper. "Target lock confirmed." "Fire," Morrison commanded softly. The weapon didn't make a sound. It didn't produce a flash of light or any visible effect. Instead, it reached across dimensional barriers and aged the target bioship by 10,000 years, in the span of a heartbeat. The living vessel, which had been pulsing with vibrant life energy, suddenly became ancient and brittle. Its biohull cracked and crumbled. Internal organs withered, and the crew aged to dust in seconds. To the Korthak fleet, it appeared that one of their ships had simply died of old age instantaneously. "Direct hit," Cross confirmed. "Target eliminated. No survivors, no wreckage." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Phase jump to coordinates 77 Alpha, next target." The Phantom slipped sideways through reality. emerging near another Korthak vessel. Around them, 17 other ghost ships were conducting similar operations. The TSS Spectre, Wraith, Revenant, and others moved through the enemy fleet like death itself, striking without warning and disappearing without trace. The Phantom slipped sideways through reality, emerging near another Korthak vessel. Around them, 17 other ghost ships were conducting similar operations. The TSS Spectre, Wraith, Revenant, and others moved through the enemy fleet like death itself, striking without warning and disappearing without trace. Captain Rodriguez aboard the Shadow used gravitational fold weapons that collapsed space around her targets, creating tiny black holes that consumed enemy ships before evaporating. Harmlessly, Commander Thompson on the Void employed quantum decoherence beams that unraveled the atomic bonds holding enemy vessels together, reducing them to component particles in milliseconds. Each ghost ship carried weapons that existed beyond conventional physics. Humanity had spent decades developing technology that operated in the spaces between realities, in dimensions that other species couldn't even perceive. While aliens built bigger guns and thicker armor, humans had learned to step outside the battlefield entirely. The Korthak fleet was in full panic now. Fleet Commander Vex's bioships clustered together in defensive formations, but it didn't matter. The Ghost Fleet could phase through their shields, emerge inside their hulls, and strike at their most vulnerable points before vanishing again. Morrison watched his tactical display as more red dots disappeared from the enemy formation. Each vanishing ship represented another small victory in humanity's secret war. For too long, Earth had been seen as weak and primitive. Today, that perception would change forever. "Commander," Park whispered urgently, "the Korthak flagship is attempting to retreat." Morrison's smile widened slightly. "Not today, Rita. Not today." He opened a channel to the other ghost ships. "All vessels, this is Phantom Actual. The enemy commander is attempting to flee. Form hunting pack formation and pursue. No survivors." Across the void, 18 invisible predators began their final hunt. The Korthak swarm had come expecting to harvest a defenseless world. Instead, they had encountered humanity's true face, not the loud, primitive species the galaxy mocked, but something far more dangerous. They had met humanity's ghosts, and ghosts, by definition, were already dead. They had nothing left to lose, and everything to prove. Fleet Commander Vex's command center had become a nightmare of chaos and terror. Bioscreens flickered with impossible readings while his crew scuttled about in panic, their multiple limbs trembling with fear. Half his fleet was gone, vanished without explanation, and the remaining ships were broadcasting desperate distress calls that no one could answer. "Commander," Threx's voice cracked with terror, "the humans are responding to our communications." On the main screen, a human face appeared. It was Captain Marcus Webb, the same unremarkable man who had stood silently in the Galactic Assembly. But now something was different. His eyes held a cold intelligence that made Vex's chitin crawl. "Fleet Commander Vex," Marcus said calmly, his voice carrying clearly through the communication link. "I believe you wanted to discuss terms of surrender." "What sorcery is this?" Vex snarled, his primary arms gesticulating wildly. "Where are my ships? What have you done?" Marcus tilted his head slightly as if considering the question. "Your ships encountered our defensive fleet. Unfortunately for them, they didn't see us coming. That tends to happen when you underestimate your opponents." "Impossible," Vex spat. "Our biosensors can detect any life form, any energy signature. Your primitive technology cannot hide from us." "You're right," Marcus agreed. "Our technology can't hide from you, but that's because what you're facing isn't technology as you understand it." On Vex's tactical display, something began to shimmer into existence. At first, it was just a distortion in space, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then, gradually, the outline of a massive ship began to form. It was unlike anything in the Korthak databases, angular, predatory, covered in surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. "Meet the TSS Reaper," Marcus said conversationally. "Our newest ghost ship. She's been sitting right next to your flagship for the past hour, completely undetected." More shapes began to appear around the remaining Korthak vessels. 18 ghost ships decloaked simultaneously, revealing a fleet that had been invisible moments before. Each ship was unique, designed for specific types of warfare that existed beyond conventional understanding. Vex felt his bio-organs contract, with fear. This is impossible. The Assembly's intelligence reports showed nothing like this. The Assembly saw what we wanted them to see, Marcus replied. Old ships, primitive weapons, outdated technology. We learned long ago that it's better to be underestimated than feared. Fear makes enemies cautious. Contempt makes them careless. The largest ghost ship, the Reaper, dwarfed Vex's biocruiser. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if the ship existed in more dimensions than normal space could contain. Weapon ports opened along its flanks, revealing armaments that glowed with colors that had no names. You have a choice, Commander. Marcus continued. You can surrender your remaining ships and return to Korthak space with a message for your High Command. Or you can continue fighting and discover what humanity is truly capable of when we stop pretending to be weak. Vex's mandibles clicked frantically as he considered his options. His fleet was shattered, his crews terrified, and he faced weapons that defied every law of physics he understood. The humans had revealed their true nature too late for him to do anything but accept defeat. What message would you have me carry? He asked, his voice hollow with defeat. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Tell them that humanity remembers every slight, every insult, every moment of mockery. Tell them that we have been preparing for this day since the first time an alien species called us primitive, and tell them that the next time anyone threatens Earth, we won't bother with warnings. The communication ended, leaving Vex alone with his shattered fleet and his racing thoughts. Around him, the ghost ships maintained their formation, weapons, trained on his vessels but not firing. They were giving him a chance to retreat with his tail between his legs. It was more mercy than the Korthak would have shown to any defeated enemy. The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been so quiet. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in stunned silence, watching the live feed from the Sol system. The mighty Korthak swarm, terror of a dozen star systems, was limping away from Earth with barely a quarter of their original fleet intact. High Chancellor Morven's crystalline form flickered with agitation as he studied the tactical reports. This is impossible, he whispered, his ancient voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The humans had no fleet capable of this level of destruction. Captain Marcus Webb stood at the center of the assembly floor, no longer the quiet observer he had been days before. Now he commanded attention, simply by existing, his presence filling the massive chamber with an authority that made even the most powerful beings uncomfortable. Honored delegates, Marcus began, his voice calm and measured. I stand before you today not as a supplicant seeking protection, but as the representative of a species that will no longer tolerate being underestimated. Vorthan of the Zephyrians rose from his seat, his blue skin pale with shock. Your ships, they appeared from nowhere. Our sensors detected nothing until they chose to reveal themselves. How is this possible? Marcus smiled slightly. For decades, you've mocked humanity for being loud, primitive, and visible. You assumed that because you could see our civilian fleet, you had seen everything we possessed. That was your first mistake. He gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing technical specifications that made several delegates gasp in recognition. Ships that existed partially outside normal spacetime, weapons that could strike across dimensional barriers, technology that operated on principles most species couldn't even comprehend. While you built bigger guns and thicker armor, Marcus continued, we learned to step outside the battlefield entirely. While you focused on conventional warfare, we developed weapons that exist beyond conventional physics. While you prepared for the wars of yesterday, we built the arsenal for tomorrow. The Korthak section of the assembly was notably empty. Fleet Commander Vex and his surviving officers had departed immediately after their defeat, carrying Marcus's message back to their high command. Word was already spreading through the galaxies, communication networks. Humanity was not what it seemed. Chancellor Morven's form brightened as he processed the implications. You deceived us. All of us. The weak fleet, the primitive technology, the helpless planet. It was all a facade. Not deceived, Marcus corrected. We simply allowed you to see what you expected to see. Humans have always been excellent at adapting to their environment, and the galactic environment taught us that strength invites challenge while weakness invites conquest. So we chose a third option. Which was? Asked the Valdorn delegate, a serpentine being whose scales rippled with nervous energy. We chose to be underestimated until the moment we decided to reveal our true capabilities. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed this level of technology while appearing primitive, what other species might be hiding similar secrets? How many civilizations had been dismissed as weak when they were actually preparing for war on levels the galaxy couldn't imagine? Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of delegates who had laughed at humanity just days before. The Terran Republic extends an offer to all peaceful species: trade, cooperation, and mutual defense against those who would threaten our shared prosperity. But let it be known throughout the galaxy that Earth is no longer a target for conquest. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering his final statement. We are humanity. We remember every slight. We prepare for every possibility. And we protect what is ours with weapons that exist beyond your comprehension. The galaxy thought it knew us. His smile was cold as winter space. The galaxy was wrong. As Marcus left the assembly floor, the chamber erupted in urgent conversations. Alliances would be reforged, treaties rewritten, and military doctrines completely revised. The balance of galactic power had shifted in a single battle, and everyone knew it. In the depths of space, 18 ghost ships returned to their hidden bases, their crews satisfied with a job well done. Humanity had finally revealed its true face to the galaxy, and that face was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. The age of underestimating Earth was over. The age of respecting humanity had begun.